Hello. The National Black Radio Hall of Fame today is introducing you to one of Atlanta's finest, the Honorable Michael Julian Bond. The city of Atlanta admires him for everything that he does. This is one of the hardest working gentlemen in the city of Atlanta. Welcome today, Mr. Bond.
Thank you. It's my pleasure to be here with you.
We're also having as one of our host interviewees, Ms. Phoenix Askar. Welcome, Phoenix.
Thank you so much.
Mr. Bond, tell us how you got involved with working with politics in the city of Atlanta.
Well, I basically kind of grew up around my father, obviously, who was in politics. I am what he used to joke about being an election night baby. Okay. He won his first election to the Georgia State House in July of 1965, and I was born 9 months later.
Oh, wow.
But that experience, he spent 8 years in the House of Representatives, another 12 years in the Georgia Senate, and so we literally grew up in the capital in that environment, going with him to different community meetings, literally growing up in the state capitol, because at that time, all the elected officials, they had space inside of the actual capitol to have their offices, and of course they only met for 4 months. Yes. So when he was conducting business, with his constituents, he would be literally at the capitol. So we traveled around to meetings with him, worked on his campaigns, and so that's where I first got the bug.
And you took that bug and took it to higher heights, because I watch everything you do, and I see you out there giving people food at food giveaways, and everybody doesn't do that. You got a good heart. Oh,
well, thank you. Well, it's about responding to the need of your constituents.
Yes.
When I first ran for city council, I was actually in a district seat. Okay. I was in the District 3 seat on the west side of downtown, all the way out to Douglas High School out there on Hampton Homes Drive.
Yes.
And I had formulated all of these plans. I had a big, platform, and I went door to door in the community. I walked door to door 3 times before election day to every single house in the community. And so I would try to talk about the things that I thought needed to be done. The constituency, they would tell you what really needs to be done.
Yes.
They said, all these plans sound great, Mr. Bond, but, if you can get this dead dog out the street or get my sidewalk paved,
yes.
I'd appreciate that. Mm-hmm. And so responding to the community for what they reflect that they need is how I've been able to be successful in serving them.
Well, I know your father is looking down from heaven. The Honorable Julian Bond is looking at his son and saying, great job, great job.
Well, I certainly hope so, yeah.
Yes.
I really do.
And you also have a grandbaby.
Oh, yes. I have a 14-month-old grandson named Jonah. He's my first grandchild, my oldest daughter and her husband. Have this great little boy, and he completely owns me.
I know. I've noticed that.
Yeah, he completely owns me. I mean, I've heard people talk about how when they become a grandparent that it's different and all this other kind of thing, but I couldn't imagine it, because as a parent, I love little babies. I love kids, and so I was all into my kids. But now it is completely different. It's like you just have no will, no resistance. And he is just starting out. He's only 14 months, but anything, he has me wrapped not just around his finger, his hand, his arm, his elbow, everything.
Yeah, and you also did a stint in radio at one point.
Oh, yes, I did. When I was in college at Morehouse in the mid-'80s, I was the nighttime DJ at WCLK. I wanted an internship. I wanted to work there. And there was a gentleman, I believe his name was Jerry, who was one of the managers there. And I said, hey, I'm all into music. I had a great record collection even then, because my father and my Uncle James, they have a enormous collection of albums, at the time. So it was my ambition to have the same kind of, collection. So I love jazz. I was really into jazz back then in particular. So I got a job working, an assignment. It wasn't a job. I wasn't paid.
Okay.
To be on the air after, I think it was Rob Law's Night Talk. They used to come on out of New York. And because CLK was nonprofit, they couldn't play the commercials. So it was my job to plug in music over the commercials. And whenever Rob Laws would go off, I'd have that time till 6 o'clock in the morning. And so, sometimes he'd go off at 12:30, sometimes he would stay on till 3:30. And I would plug, and I got a lot of good calls. And at the time, they said that if you got 3 calls during your show, that was really great. And I would get like 5 or 6, and this is overnight, So I did that for about 2.5 months, but I couldn't make the schedule because I was young enough to be foolish enough to think that I could be up all night long and still function, during the day and not have to sleep. But it finally caught up with me. And I said, and I was starting classes, so I said, I can't do this yet.
Okay, Phoenix.
Councilman Bond, we know that you come from a long history of legacy and leadership, and you were first elected in 1993. Could you talk a little bit about sustainability? How have you survived from 1993 to now?
Well, it goes back to the story I was telling about listening to the constituency, and because like the area I represented was the area that I grew up in. It was basically, you have Vine City, English Avenue, Washington Park, going out to Hunter Hills, and then ultimately Dixie Hills. So I was born right in the middle of the AU Center, over on Jepta Street. We moved to Yearley Street around the corner, and then eventually to Sunset. So I went to school at Oglethorpe over there by Morris Brown, went to Douglas High School, and of course I went to Morehouse College. So my whole growing up was there, my formative years. And so these are people who knew me, they knew my parents well. There were a lot of retired teachers and educators and other professionals in that area that had known my grandparents. And so I had the luxury of being acquainted with them, from that in that level of relationship. So it was actually easy to listen to the community, to be engaged with them, and to have good relations with them. But as I said in my earlier story, I had a lot of ideas about what needed to change and what happened, but the community would tell you what they need. And Absolutely. So we wanted to focus and deliver for what the community needed. One of the biggest projects that was over there was the return of the Washington Park pool. Now, if you know anything about the Washington Park pool, it was the first public swimming pool for African Americans in the state of Georgia, one of the first in the southeastern United States. And it was built in the 1930s, And so when MARTA came through in the 70s, they removed the pool. And so the community was very upset about it. And so we worked to have the pool replaced. We had a state-of-the-art natatorium built, and the community was very appreciative of it. But when you do things for the community, because at that time when I got elected, it was one of the lowest voter turnout areas. I mean, as we improved things and met their needs and desires, the voter turnout in the community went up.
That's great.
Yeah, people began to participate. So, having that engagement is what I attribute to my longevity.
Okay, Mr. Bonds, you created or authored and co-authored a combination of over 1,800 pieces of legislation to date, and one of the largest numbers in Atlanta's history, in the city's history. So can we talk about some of the legislation laws that you helped impact into the city?
Well, yes, I'm very proud of my legislative record because technically that's what city council people are, legislators. So I've covered the entire gamut of whether it's public safety, city utilities, parks and rec, all those different types of things. And one of the things I'm proudest of is my creation of the Atlanta Development Authority, which is now known as Invest Atlanta. Responding to the need of the community. When I first came into office and was sworn in 1994, there was a lot of disinvestment in the District 3 area, the West Side area. And so I studied the redevelopment laws and powers of the city. And so at that time, you had AEDC, which was the Atlanta Economic Development Partnership, and you had URFA, which was the Urban Redevelopment Finance Authority. Well, ACDC was a redevelopment agency, and URFA was obviously an authority. Now, why that's important, and this policy wonks will be all into this, yes. But why that's important is that a redevelopment authority basically has state-level powers, right? You can write a prescription for whatever you want it to do, and it actually has more power than a city does to raise money, finance things, and that type of stuff. And so I said, well, even though the city has created some authorities, they hadn't created any with a specific focus on redeveloping the community. And so we had just passed, when I came into office, the creation of the West Side TAD, which was actually targeted to redevelop the Georgia Tech area, but it was expanded to the Vine City and West Side area. So what I did is, for the first time, we created what was called the West Side Public Development Authority, which was the first time you had a redevelopment agency and a redevelopment authority under one umbrella to focus on redeveloping the community. And that idea eventually evolved after conversations with Mayor Campbell at the time and other folks on the council that said we need to expand this idea. So Invest Atlanta, now known as, or originally known as the Land Development Authority, is born out of that. It's a redevelopment agency and a redevelopment authority, so it can raise money to develop projects, and they have done close to well over, I believe, $2 or $3 billion in developments at that time.
Yes, I think that's incredible, because it definitely has been very impactful to minority small businesses, as well as enabling the minority communities across Atlanta.
Oh, absolutely.
So I just want to say thank you on behalf of everybody for that.
Oh, well, thank you. And, that's been something I've been very serious about over my career also, is making sure that our minority and business enterprise program is up to speed and is enabling minorities, men, women, people of color, to be able to access the process at City Hall and to build wealth,
You've pioneered some of Atlanta's housing programs as far as affordable housing initiatives and projects. How do you kind of combat what's going on in the White House with trying to maintain affordable housing throughout the city? Is that something that's being talked about through legislation and in the city councils? Oh,
yes, absolutely, because, the city is really dependent a lot on federal grants, and whether they're planning grants or actually grants for construction, or the ability to work with HUD to help to finance and sustain housing development. And I'll give you a good example. I mean, in the 1990s, when there was a dissolution of the concentrated housing projects in the city of Atlanta, it was the strategy of Mayor Campbell and Renee. I'm losing. I've had to apologize to Renee because I'm forgetting her last name. She was head of the Housing Authority. That they would do mixed income developments, and that was a novel, new idea then, where you wouldn't have concentrated pockets of poverty. But as an unforeseen circumstance with that, HUD ran with that nationally, right? To say, hey, this is a good way to break up pockets of poverty. But the HUD policy became a detriment, because when you do the mixed income development, you're actually shrinking the amount of available units for those who need it the most, right? Yes. Even though your intention is to not build a pocket of poverty, you're actually kind of shrinking the amount of units for those who need it. And so there was a hope that finally it had trickled back to HUD's attention at the end of the Biden administration, that there would be a reconsideration of that policy, but those hopes were dashed, because of the outcome of the election. And so also that what also hurts cities like Atlanta is that HUD, as a result, outgrowth of that policy, they deem that housing authorities like ours can't build low-income or temporary housing for homelessness.
Wow.
So people wonder, why wouldn't the city build this? Why don't cities build more housing for this population? HUD rules, federal rules don't allow our housing authority to do so. Mm-hmm. Now the city proper is doing it really in a roundabout way, getting around the laws and the rules. But our city budget, even though we just passed the largest budget in the city's history, it's still not enough money to build enough housing for everybody. So we're lucky. We had to depend on federal grants. Had to depend on different ways to finance these things with local bonds, and we've done that over the last 8 years. I was proud of the fact that twice I have been the sole author of the housing bonds that the city has issued, over 180 million. And I was co-sponsor of another tranche of bonds for almost 250 million. But we can only do that at a certain clip so that we don't harm the overall finances of the city.
That is super impressive. Just two more questions. Marsha touched a little bit about you doing the Meals with Meaning during COVID. Why was it important for you to maintain making sure the city got fed, during the pandemic?
Well, this is one of the things I'm most proud of and feel most fortunate to be involved in was the Meals with Meaning program. I actually started out helping and partnering with Hosea Helps with Elizabeth Omalami over there, who, her father, Jose Williams, was a mentor of mine, a mentor of my dad also. And there was a funny story. When I first got elected, Jose had an office down right there at Peachtree, where West Peachtree splits, and he would always have a line of people there every day, waiting to ask him questions, and get help from him. And so when I got elected, he started sending people to my office. I had no idea how to help these folks. And they said, they had all kinds of, tremendous, crushing problems. And they said, well, Jose Williams said, you'll help me. He said, you're the one who can help me. And so that was like baptism by fire. But he actually got me involved with his program. And we would do turkey giveaways, during the holidays. So I was kind of creeping with that. Pandemic comes along, and I worked with his daughter Elizabeth, and so we were doing it, kind of once a week. But then the corporate company HelloFresh, they were moving to Georgia. They wanted to partner. They wanted to do something, and so they had a huge factory down in southeast Georgia, and they said, we will donate all this food to you if you can get it out. And so we set up a coalition of groups to distribute their food, about 8,000 meals a week.
Wow.
Right? And so we did that with them up until December of 2024, when they closed their factory, because after the pandemic, the demand for those home prescription meals went way down. So they moved their operations back out west. But we were able to feed, serve 1.3 million meals in almost 4 years. And so we've continued the program in a full partnership with the Atlanta Food Bank and the African American Ministries, CDC. And so we're distributing, we're doing it on a month-to-month basis, sometimes twice a month. But we've actually have more food now to distribute than we did when we were working with HelloFresh. So it's been a tremendous blessing, and I got to meet Marsha that way, and many other volunteers, because we had city employees helping us on the program all the time. They would come and they would be on loan, to help us out. But we've had people like Marsha just walk up and say, hey, I want to help, I want to be involved. And so we've got a cadre of about 30 core volunteers that aren't city employees that come, from time to time. And it's really just been very rewarding, and it's been a bit blessing to the community, but it's been a real blessing to me personally.
Marsha has also recruited the National Black Radio Hall of Fame
Yes,
members.
I noticed that.
She got us all on board.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, Mr. Bonds, what's next for you?
Well, we're up for re-election. I'd like to, if the voters will let me, continue to serve in this seat. I believe that it is a calling on my life. I mean, when I was young and a little more frivolous, when I was in college, I said, my dad was in office. I said, well, I'll do that. I'd like to be elected, maybe do it twice, run for office, and then go off and be a lawyer or something else like that, make a lot of money. But once I actually got into it, serving people just really spoke to me. We used to go around with my dad when he was in town because he traveled, a lot because of his notoriety. But when he was here, he would take us to Six Flags and the parks and stuff like that. But to spend time, we would be with him when he would go to community meetings, when he would go to marches, when he was going to the kind of, when they say people want to be in the room,
Yes.
we would be in the room, with all these adults, and a lot of times I looked like I wasn't paying attention, but I was drawing, but I'm an auditory person, so I was listening, and it had an effect on me. And he was the president of the NAACP here locally at the time in the 70s and 80s, so we literally grew up in the NAACP movement. So this was something that, I just kind of absorbed. And once I got in office myself, I just felt a freedom in a way, you know what I mean? I really felt like I had found myself and what I wanted to do. And I'm really pleased that the Atlanta community has embraced me and it has allowed me to do what I love.
I do believe that, you found your purpose, and you have definitely served with excellence. So,
Well, thank you.
I believe that you are definitely the people's choice. So I pray and hope that everyone listening and watching will continue to support you, continue to vote for you. And we just thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you for this gracious interview. I really appreciate it.
I have one final question for you. If I'm new to the Atlanta area, I don't know your father's history, and I'm in your precinct, what would you tell me to make me understand who Michael Julian Bond is and why I should vote for you?
Okay, well, Michael Julian Bond is the son of two civil rights activists, Julian and Alice Bond. Mm-hmm. And my parents were founding members of the Atlanta Student Movement and also founding members of the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. They were the students who desegregated Atlanta, back in 1960. And this is the 65th anniversary of that year. My mother, there's 5 children, right? Mm-hmm. So my mother stayed home and raised us. You could do that at that time. And my dad became a civil rights activist. And this is born out of what his father did. My grandfather, Dr. Horace Mann Bond, who was first black president of Fort Valley, first black president of Lincoln University, and was an educator. My dad's mother, Julia Bond, that's where the Julian comes from, was an educator also. But they were, I guess, Du Bois's talented 10th, so to speak. That they were saying, hey, my grandfather was very famous for saying in his classrooms, you got a brain, use it, focus your brain and push. Push your mind, push yourself to improve not only your life, but the life of all of those around you, And my grandfather was considered what they used to call a race man, not a racist, but a race man, which meant that he was a guy who stood up for African Americans, put himself out there. He was close with W.B. Du Bois, close with E. Franklin Frazier, John Hope and all those folks. They were all contemporaries. And so out of that cauldron came Michael Julian Bond. We were born in the middle of 1960s during the Civil Rights Movement, during the formation of the Black Power movement. And so being of service was really just kind of a part of our household. I mean, the people who were formative in the Civil Rights Movement or prominent, John Lewis and my dad were best friends at the time. And John Lewis and his wife Lillian were my godparents. A lot of people don't know that. And so, we were just in that environment. And so I think I stumbled into politics, but like I said, once in it, I felt that I really had found myself, had found my calling, and want to provide service to the broader community based on whom I've descended from.
Okay, well, that would influence me as a voter.
Absolutely.
All right.
That would influence me greatly. We appreciate you coming today.
Oh, well, thank you both very much. I really do appreciate the opportunity.
You are quite honorable, but I know you're a down-to-earth type person, and you are a people person. And that's why I don't mind when you put on Facebook, he's on Facebook, people, when you put on Facebook the different things that you all are doing. And I said, okay, I can't make it to this, but I'm going to put a little comment saying I like it, you know,
Oh, okay. Well,
and so
thanks.
forth.
Yeah.
But yes, you are a hero, and I'm hearing a book in there, and the book could probably be called The Other Michael.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's an interesting title.
Thank
Well,
you.
I'll consider that. Maybe we'll talk about that.
Okay.
All right, great.
All right. And we're going to close the show out. We have a great person with us today, and he's one of those each one teach one, each one reach one individuals. And we thank you.
Thank you.